Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, guys. Celtic Warband here, and welcome back to another battle in Medieval Kingdoms 1212 AD. And this is a little bit different than what we usually do on the channel. This is battle number 1 of a 3-part series, where the Scottish will be fighting against the English to establish independence. So I hope you guys enjoyed this series, and if you would like to see more battles that are geared towards a series in general, feel free to leave a comment down below and let me know what you would like to see next. But without further ado, let's get to battle number 1. The first Scottish army we have on the battlefield today is the King's Army, commanded by Joe Onnet, and you can see the King is here in the front lines along with his nobles and barons. And this is a tier 1 battle only, guys, so I think the English have a couple of tier 2 units, but the majority of the units you will see in today's battle are tier 1. With that in mind, let's take a look at what the King's Army has brought to the battlefield. He's got a couple of units of the Scottish Knights, which are tier 1, so they're not super heavily armored, but they should have a pretty decent charge bonus. The staple backbone infantry of Scotland are the sergeants here. You can see he's got quite a few of them, about 4 or 5 units. Then right behind that, he has about 5 units of the Highland spear Sathern. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. Right behind that, he has a couple units of the pike Shiltron, so hopefully the pikes will be able to best the English billmen, be it that the pikemen will be able to reach farther than the English billmen will, so that should be a pretty good counter to them. For his archers, he's brought a lot of the Ettrick archers, pretty solid archer units. And then his best infantry is at the back here. He has the Scottish Foot Knights, which are pretty solid in melee. And right behind that, he's brought the Galloglyke, which are the heavy two-handed axe units that Scotland has in their roster. You can see he has quite a bit of them as well. So that is it for the King's Army, so let's go ahead and take a look at the next one. The next Scottish army on the battlefield today is the Lord's Army, commanded by myself. So this is a subordinate to the King of Scotland, and he has rallied his men together and answered the call of his king to throw off the English oppressors. You can see that he is here in the front lines, and he has brought quite a few units of the Scottish Knights as well. You can see them lined up here, 4 units in total. But the Lord's Army is going to be of a lesser tier than the King's Army, so obviously no Galloglyke and none of the heavy Scottish Foot Knights in this army. It's mostly levy units. So I've got a lot of the Spear Catherine, or Spear Sathern. I wish I knew how to pronounce that. I will learn how to pronounce that for following episodes. But I've got a few units of them mixed in with a lot of sergeant units, so just basic sword and shield units for Scotland. And I've got the Scottish longbowmen, so none of the Ettrick archers in this army, just Scottish longbows, but hopefully their range will be able to go toe-to-toe with the English longbows. And then I have brought some pike Shiltron as well, and also some Highlanders, which are very cheap melee infantry units, so they're more of the light infantry units and the peasants of the era. But that is it for the Scottish forces, so let's go ahead and take a look at the English. And now we come to the English forces, which are camped atop of this very steep hill, and it does consist of 2 separate English armies, but we're going to take a look at them as a whole, the first army being commanded by Azrian Fox, and the second army being commanded by Tattoos and Welding. Right in the front lines, we have some of the very capable and very powerful English longbowmen, and with their superior terrain advantage and their superior range, I would expect them to get a lot of kills on the lightly armored Scots as they do charge up this very steep slope. The English longbows are also complemented by the mercenary Welsh longbows, so it's nice to see a variety here. The main line of infantry consists entirely of mercenary Welsh spearmen, which, if you're thinking from the King's point of view, is actually a very good business venture, because the more mercenaries that die in this battle, the less you will have to pay. But they are closely reinforced by some of the English sergeant units, and we've also got some of the English foot knights here as well. Of course, no English army would be complete without a few units of billmen, and we've also got some extra archers as well as some axe sergeants on the battlefield, so we've got some two-handed units here for England. In the trees, we've got some of the English knights, which are hidden from view, and over on the other side, it's more of the same. We have some more of the English foot knights, some more of the axe sergeants, and some more of the English knights themselves. So hopefully they will be able to engulf the Scots as they do charge into the Welsh spearmen in the center. And of course, last but not least, we do have the English king on the battlefield as well, so he is very keen on seeing this rebellion put down, but hopefully the Scottish don't lose this battle, because then this three-part series will come to a very abrupt end. But that is it for the English army comp, guys, so let's go ahead and finally get to this battle. Alright guys, welcome to the battlefield, and as you can see we have these Scottish forces moving forwards across the plain and then up the hill towards the English. And I do have my Scottish bowmen in the front lines, but I'm not too confident that they're going to be able to best the English longbows. Let's go ahead and zoom out and see where everybody is deployed. If I turn on the HUD here, you can see that I am on the left-hand side, so this is the Lord's force on the left-hand flank, and then on the right-hand flank we have the King's army with the more elite Galloglyke and the Scottish Foot Knights, and the King in reserve. He's got a very nice vantage point of the entire battle, as you can see. If we zoom into him, he can see where all the forces are being deployed, and also if there are any English forces in the trees that will flank around, he will be able to dispatch forces very quickly to relieve them. So let's go ahead and take a look at where the English is deployed. If we zoom over to this side, you can see that they have a pretty nice hill that they are fortified on, and we do have a lot of the bowmen pushing forwards. You can see we've got some of the Welsh bowmen in a secondary line to the English longbowmen. So we've got many archers here on this hilltop. Now, we do have the Scottish longbowmen firing as well, but you can see that they're not doing nearly as much damage as the English longbows are doing. You can already see a lot of dead Scots on this battlefield. Fortunately, the Scottish longbows have little to no armor whatsoever, so they are just being picked apart by the more skilled English archers. I'm quickly trying to push some of my spears forwards and maybe try and have them focus down the cheaper spears, and then that will allow my better sergeants to get up there without being peppered down as well. I'm also hugging this wood line here. I've got one unit of spears in the trees, just trying to flush out any of the English that may be hiding here that could flank around us later on. I think the same is being done by Joanna. You can see that he's hugging the tree line and making sure that there's nothing that can flank us later. And it looks like the spears have done their job. I wanted to push them right up but not engage just yet, but that did flush the longbows from the front lines. They have had to pull back to their secondary line. However, the Welsh spearmen are extremely solid, and this is going to be a pretty epic clash. We've got the Scottish spears versus the Welsh spears. My goodness, a lot of arrows coming down, especially flanking shots. You can see that they're hitting the sides that are the opposite of the shield, so they're going to do a lot more damage, but I think we are going to be pushing in very shortly here. And I'm going to have to be quick about it, because if I take too long, then we're just going to lose more forces unnecessarily. But you can see I have put my spearmen into a shield wall that will give them a little bit of extra melee defense and missile block. And now we have pushed in to engage the Welsh. And now I'm charging forwards my swords, adding to the amount of men on this battlefield, which is very good. And here we go. You can see I'm really committing a lot of forces to this flank. If I turn on the HUD, you can see that I've got a lot of cavalry over here. I got a good charge into the flanks of the sergeants, and now I'm pulling back, trying to get these billmen out of position. I have a lot of my cavalry on this left-hand flank. You can see the English cavalry is also here. We've got 3 units of the English Knights versus 4 units of the Scottish Knights. Let's actually zoom in and see this charge here. Scotland versus England. Of course, the English Knights will be better on the charge and in melee, but it's all about just tying down these English Knights and prohibiting them from flanking around my very morale-vulnerable units in the center. Another good charge there as well. I just want to zoom out of this force so you guys can actually see what's going on. Let's put this on slow motion because it's not a very long battle. But yeah, so we've got 1 unit engaged here, 1 unit engaged here. We've got a 3rd unit that was trying to break free. You can see I got a really disgusting charge onto the backs of the billmen and sergeants here. I've also got my Shieldtron that have kind of pincered them in. And the English Knights were going to get a good charge onto the backs of my Scottish Knights, but they've had to change targets and commit to my 3rd unit. And I believe I do have some Shieldtron coming in to aid my cavalry, because as I said, the Scottish cavalry is probably not going to win against the English cavalry. I've also got a ton of my sergeants coming over here. I've got 5 units that are pushing onto this flank. The center is not going to be where I'm committing most of my forces. I'm going to leave that to the King's men. You can see we already have more of these sergeants being pushed up, but I'm not going to win in this middle area. As you can see, they've got rank upon rank of billmen. They've got English foot knights. They've got longbows. This is a very tough nut to crack, and my poorly armored and poorly trained Scottish warriors are not going to break through here. And just look at this, all of my units are being held just by one unit of Welsh spearmen, basically, or a line of Welsh spearmen. Let's take a look at how Joe's doing over on his flank, because we do have some Scottish fighting in the trees here. This is a tough fight for Joe because he's actually fighting some of the English foot knights here, and we do have a unit of billmen and a unit of English knights in reserve. I guess that is prohibiting Joe from actually committing with his sergeants over here. Plus, there's no sense in throwing away your sergeants against these billmen. I would rather just focus them with the Ettrick archers, which it looks like Joe is doing. And here we go. We've got the elites of the elites coming forwards here. Let's turn this back on to play and watch the Gallagher and the Scottish foot knights, the royalty of Scotland, push up the slopes. Unfortunately, they are being focused down a lot by archers. Again, those Welsh longbows and English longbows are going to be very tough indeed, but still very huge on the flanks here with my Scottish foot knights. It looks like we actually have some axe sergeants charging in, so England is committing more forces over to this side. But I still think that we're doing better. The Scottish are doing better on this flank than the English at this point. And if we looked at the numbers of men on the battlefield, it's pretty even, a little bit more in our favor. We've got about 1,500 more men than the English do, but we started with 2,000 more men. 3,000 more men, actually. So, I mean, the man count is in favor of the English. They definitely killed more of us than we've killed of them, but it's only a matter of time before we win on this flank. I pushed more sergeant units in. I've got the Shiltren unit in to help my cavalry, who was actually wavering there for a second. But now we've got the English axe sergeants being committed here. Thankfully, the English cavalry looks like it could break at any minute. And we've got the sergeants pushing in over here to aid this cavalry because it is losing. And let's take a look at what's going on. I charge my general into the side here to try to break this cavalry. I've got another unit of cavalry that did break and returned. But now we've got the King's bodyguard coming over to the left-hand flank to lend a hand. But now we've got the Gallagher pushing in over here. You can see that they should get a pretty good charge bonus off against the Welsh spearmen. And let's see how we are doing over here. We do have some Shiltron over here, which is good, and some Gallagher, but they're still not engaging just yet. And I like how Joe has kept his 2 units of Scottish Knights in reserve. There's only 1 unit of cavalry here, but he doesn't know what else could be hiding in the trees, so he's being cautious. He's allowing his Shiltron and Sergeant mix to best the billmen, and it looks like now he is finally going to commit. Again, though, just a long battle line here. It kind of reminds me of the historical battle that I did on the Normans versus the Saxons. I'm trying to remember what that battle is called. It's the Battle of Hastings, I believe, yes. But just a very long battle line in between 2 stands of trees. You can see my archers are wavering there, which is unfortunate, but they're mainly there just to provide target practice for the English. I already knew we wouldn't be winning that engagement. And how are we looking over here? We do have the English king kind of riding around the flanks here, which is unfortunate. I do have my Shiltren here. I was going to try and set it up and pen in the king's bodyguard, but he's going to go for a nice, good charge onto the backs of my sergeants here. You can see some huge hits. Very, very nice indeed. So the king's bodyguard is pretty desperate at this point. We are winning on the near right flank, just the far right flank is a little bit up in the air. But if I turn on the HUD, you can see that it's basically just some cavalry, and they've had to disengage some sergeants from the front lines and bring them over to help in the cavalry fight. But now I've also got another unit of sergeants that are pushing the billmen from the flank, so their numbers are starting to fall. And again, the Shiltren just so useful in this situation. They haven't gotten many kills, but they're tying up 1, 2, 3 units, it looks like. I've got another unit of sergeants here, but maybe I should push the Shiltren in a little bit further. Let's go ahead and take a look at this main battle line here. Such a good battle. And phase number 1 in the three-part series. But again, these Welsh spearmen are just so solid, holding strong against overwhelming numbers. Very nice indeed. But it looks like we do have the secondary line ready to push in. It consists of some sergeants and English foot knights. How are we looking over on this flank here? If I zip over here, yeah, so it looks like the English knights did commit, but we do have some of the Scottish knights over here helping out. And it looks like they might have charged the pike children there. But them pulling out a melee is going to cost them quite a few casualties. And the right flank has shattered, actually, over here. And I hope that I haven't been referring to this flank as the right flank the entire time. It is the left flank. But on the right flank, it looks like Joe is slowly buckling in on the main line. You can see we've got one unit of English foot knights holding here. Actually, 2 units of English foot knights, so they're going to hold for quite some time. And you can see over on this flank that the English have formed up a secondary line with the English foot knights between this rock, which is actually a pretty good formation. However, unfortunately for them, the mercenary Welsh spearmen decided to break, so now I've got a little bit of an opening here to sneak through, and that has caused another Welsh spearman unit to break, so now we've got a huge hole in the English lines to be able to push through. Meanwhile, on the near left flank, we finally broke those sergeants and the cavalry. Unfortunately, I did lose my Scottish knights, but just tying up this amount of English cavalry was worth it. It allowed Joe to not have as many cavalry units on his side. And I've also got a few units that are running after these troops, making sure they don't return to the battlefield. Let's kind of focus in over here. My general is actually engaged against the English foot knights if we zoom down in. Sure, that could be a pretty cool battle to witness. And I don't dare to pull him out of melee because I don't want him to die yet. The battle is swinging into our favor, but by no means is it a victory yet. Switch on the HUD and take a look at what's going on. You can see that I am pushing a ton of sergeants in to try and silence these mercenary Welsh longbowmen and the English longbowmen, trying to catch them with my cavalry as well, but we have both of the King's bodyguards over here ready to charge my men as they are pulled out of position. We finally broke the far left flank, which is excellent, so that adds another 3 units into the mix. And in the center, I mean, they're still holding so strong. The sergeants over here are doing well. The mercenary Welsh spearmen holding strong. Looks like we do have some mercenary Welsh longbowmen that have used up their ammunition. They're being pushed into the front lines as well. But here we go. We've got a really solid charge from Joe, and his English knights just got the slow motion on in time, so you guys can witness that. But it looks like we will actually have a counter charge from the English king. So those Scottish knights are probably not going to escape. They did charge the backs of their own Welsh spearmen, though, so that could help us in the long run. But actually, there's the king right there, as you can see, so he is right in the front lines, coming up against some of the Scottish Gaelic. So he's going to have to be careful not to lose his life there. And if this general's bodyguard is pulled out of position, the king may well be trapped and actually slain there. You can see that there are some sergeants that have rallied around to him to try to make sure that he does not perish, because if he perishes, surely the resolve of the English will break. With 5 minutes left, we've got 5,400 Scotsmen versus 2,600, so we've got about a 2-to-1 ratio now, and it looks like finally we've got these axe sergeants breaking over here. If we zip over here, you can see the English foot knights are just breaking, and that may cause the English foot knights here to start to waver as well, with them seeing their comrades start to flee. And it looks like the English knights over here are just about to be wiped out. We've got the king's bodyguard coming in to get his sword wet against the English. Oh, and actually, it looks like the king's bodyguard is going to pull out. Where is he? Yeah, so he actually escapes the battlefield after shattering a unit of Gaelic and the Scottish knights. So well done there. Very good charge. Let's go ahead and turn this to play, and you can see that the English are charging the backs of my men here, trying to keep their English knights alive, or the English foot knights. I am trying to volley the cavalry to stop them from doing these cycle charges, because they are definitely making us pay. I've got some Scottish knights over here challenging some depleted axe sergeants. And here we go. The tide has opened. I've got more units pushing in over here again, trying to silence these longbows who are just kiting me, firing and pulling back again. This one still has quite a bit of ammunition too, and I'm sure that they are focusing my pike children, trying to stop them with a mercenary Welsh spearman that had returned from routing, but unfortunately it did break. I'm interested to see where the King's bodyguard is going, though. Let's actually jump into... Oh, hang on. Can I not jump into his... Oh, I wanted to jump into the King's point of view, but no matter. We still saw a pretty disgusting charge there. The poor sergeants, again, way out of position, not formed up whatsoever, but I've just continued to charge more sergeants down, and it looks like the King's bodyguard is going to try and disengage once again. Very frustrating that I can't get a hold of him with my units. I just have no other choice but to continue and pursue. But here we go, another charge, just turns around and gets a huge charge once again into my sergeants, and you can see that that has caused two of them to rout. And unfortunately here I did lose my general, so the Lord has sacrificed his life for the King and his cause. I did push my pike children over here to lend aid to the English foot knights, but it did not save my lord's life. And look at this center. The center is still holding after all this time. Let's actually zoom in and take a look at some of the close and personal fighting. Oh, snap, yep. Englishman claims the Scotsman's life there. It looks like it's 3v1 here. Welsh longbows pushing in further to the Scot lines. You can see in the distance there we've got the Scottish cavalry arriving behind the English lines, though, which is really good to see. However, we've got the King's bodyguard who has turned around and is charging the sergeant units that are pulled out of position. They turn around, get a huge hit into the Scottish dismounted knights. Oh, and they're going to get a good charge into these guys as well. Let's take a look. Yeah, really nice charges. The cavalry in 1212, just such a potent force on the battlefield. Thankfully, we do have some Scottish knights that have pushed in to try and tie them up. And now we've got them. You can see we've got the Gallaglaik that have charged in from the other flank to lock this cavalry in. And where is the King? Let's actually slow this down so I can try and find the King for you guys. He actually may have been slain. Where's the other King's bodyguard? I think one of them... Yeah, here's the King over here, so he is still alive. He's fighting my pike children over here, which isn't the best option, but how are we doing in the center? Finally, those English knights, the English foot knights, have broken. The other one still stands strong, and I am going to get a nice charge into the flank of the Welsh spearmen and the sergeants that have been holding here since the beginning of the battle. So there we go. Now that we are behind enemy lines, we should see their morale falter and crack. Let's actually put this back onto play. Not too much longer. 1 minute and 22 seconds remaining. And one of the King's bodyguards has broken. The second one is wavering, but the King will actually be able to escape alive. You can see there he is. He is going to make it out of the battlefield. So he has forsaken his men. He realizes that the battle is lost, and he and what's left of his retinue are just going to get out of here. And they are going to retreat to the nearest town and try and mount a defense against the oncoming Scottish forces. But pretty much a huge chain rout at this point. And now we can just enjoy the last few minutes of slaughter, because this is a victory for the Scottish. So the hill is strewn with bodies. You can see especially here in this main line, many Scots and Englishmen have died for their countries today. But the Scottish will be victorious and will be marching forth deeper into English lands. Very, very cool indeed. And I believe this is the Scottish King that has challenged the English King, who has returned. there he is. And that's it, a Pyrrhic victory. So let's go ahead and end the replay, take a look at the end results. So both of us fielding very similar numbers here, and you can see that the most kills that I got are probably from my sergeants and my cavalry. Again, really heavily on that left flank, we did pretty well. Same with Joe, a lot of his Gallaglyte did pretty good, but I think most of his kills were on that right flank, with his cavalry getting pretty good kills. Looking at Tattoo with the King's Bodyguard, the King's Bodyguard, he got almost 300 kills, which is excellent. English Foot Knights pulling their weight, and the longbows just absolutely destroying the lightly armored Scottish troops. Same with Azrian Fox and his King's Bodyguard, 203 kills. Not as good on the English Foot Knights, however, they did tear my Lord down, and they also held for the majority of the battle there. Also, really good kills on his longbowmen. So that is it for the first battle, guys, and don't forget there are 2 more remaining. So as I said, the English king has escaped from the battlefield and is pulling back to a nearby town to mount a defense. And we will see that battle tomorrow. So thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this in the future. And I will see you in the next one.